Hey everybody, General Sky here, and today we're going to be going over how to create a swappable animation state in Unity. What this will let us do is easily assign lots of different unique animations to something like a character without having to set them all up in the animation state machine, because that can get like really messy after a while when you have a lot of states and things connecting them and parameters, dealing with how they work together and all that stuff can get a little unwieldy. But we'll still be able to use the functionality of the state machine. So you can use stuff like the blend states or like your old state machines, and this is an easy way to just sort of implement something to easily swap through animations. So I'll be showing you how to set up the animation swapping, and then in the next video, I'll be showing you how you might implement it into a state machine with sort of a blend shape state, so for like a walk animation. For this tutorial, I'll be using Kevin Iglesias' Villager Animation Pack, which you can find at the Unity Asset Store, and it's really nice. It comes with a lot of animations and these nice little base meshes too that you can just use, so that's great. So right now we have a basic scene set up. We've got our character in here. We've got some cubes that we're going to be using to trigger the different animations. I've got my character, the animation of my character inside of an empty game object. That way you can sort of keep them separated and swap the models and stuff a little bit easier down the line. That's just a personal preference. You can put them directly on the you can do this stuff directly on the animator itself, whatever has the animator, but I'm going to be using it on an empty and just have a reference to it. So to get started, let's just make a state machine really quick. So for our character, we're going to be creating our new state machine. You could be implementing this into your old state machine. So we'll go to create animation, or just create animator controller, and we'll just call this our character for now. We're going to go to our villager, and we're going to assign character. We'll just double click open it, and I have it open up here. So we're going to create a new state. This will be our empty. This will sort of just be our base state. We'll call that whatever you want to do. This is going to be like an idle state that your character goes into. So we'll just choose one of these idles. See, there's like a lot of animations for these. Super nice. And then we're going to create a new state, and this is going to be our, what I'm calling a utility state. This is the state with the animation that we're going to be swapping out. So I'm just going to call this util. And the motion is important. So it has to be either an animation state. It has to be an animation clip that you're not using anywhere else in the state machine. Because of the way we're replacing it, it's going to be looking for a specific animation clip, and then for each of those clips, it's going to replace that animation. So we need one that's only going to replace this single animation. So you can choose one that you're not going to be using, but I think we're just going to create one really quick. So we can just select our object that we're going to animate. We're going to go to Window, Animation, Animation, and we're just going to go to click on this button. We can just click create a new clip, and we'll just call this util. Save it, and we have our new clip, and we're just going to leave it blank. We don't need it to be anything. So we'll just close out this window, and we have our new state. So in our, and it adds it, actually added it for us. Look at that, that's nice. So we'll just use the one that it added, and it put in the motion. Otherwise, you can just drag the animation clip into the motion slot, and it'll just like put it in. And then we're going to be, the way that we're going to be triggering this is from any state, so we can just swap out the animation whenever we want. So we're going to make a transition from any state into util, and what this will do was whenever this gets triggered, whatever condition, we need to create a condition, but whenever the condition gets triggered or is true or whatever, then it'll switch to this no matter where it is in the state machine, which is really nice. So we're going to be creating a trigger, and we'll call this util, utility. That's just what I'm going for. And click on our transition, and in our conditions, if we hit the plus, since we only have one, it'll automatically select it. But if you have multiple, you can just hit the drop down and choose which trigger you want. So util. So that should be all we really need to do for now for our state machine. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to be creating the script that goes on our character. Let me spell it right. So what I'm going to be making in this script is basically going to be going on wherever you're controlling your player animations via code, if you are doing that. So where you'd be setting the triggers and the bools and stuff in the animation state machine, you would just add this stuff in there. So what we're going to be using is called and we'll just add this here. animator, animator override controller. I'm just going to call this anims override. And what an animation override controller is, it's pretty cool. It's like an animation controller, and you can plug it into the same spots. But basically, it lets you take a base animator controller and just swap out the animations in the different states. So it'll change the clips. So you can have like a base one, like this NPC animator that'll handle like the walking and running and all those different states and attacks and stuff like that. And then have a second one for like in this example on the Unity documentation, it has an ogre animator. So this would be for an ogre character. You create an override for the ogre, and then in it you would just replace all the animations you want. So the idle would go to an ogre idle, a walk, ogre run, all that stuff, and it'll just use the base NPC animator and just swap out all the animations, so you can keep the same state machines across all your different characters without having to like duplicate them or anything like that, which is really nice. So we're going to be creating one. If you're already using one of these, you don't have to create it. You can just probably assign it here. But since we're using a base animator state controller, we're just going to create one in Awake. Let's just get rid of start and update. We don't really need these. And we're going to go to Awake. And we're just going to create one really quick and really simple. So we'll just do... first, actually, we need a reference to our animator. So we'll go public animator anims. And so in our awake function, we'll just do anims override equals a new animator override controller. And in this, we're going to we need to put in the animation controller we want to create a copy of. So we'll put in our anims.runtime animation controller. So we've created an animation override controller that's based off of our current animator controller. And then we need to assign this override controller back into our animator so we can actually like manipulate it and change it and stuff. So we'll just put anims.runtime animation controller equals our anims override. So we just create the controller and we just assign it here. So that's what we need to do in Awake. And again, if you have already using an animation override controller, you don't need to do this. You can just, assign it in the inspector. But we're going to add a method here. So this is going to be a public void. I'm going to call this animutil. And this is going to be what swaps out. This is what we're going to be calling when we want to swap out to a new animation. So then we're just going to need an animation clip in here. And this animation clip is the new clip that we're going to be swapping out. So to do this, we'll just take our override controller, so anims override, and in brackets, we're going to be putting in the animation clip we want to override. So this is why we had the separate animation clip that's not going to be used anywhere else. So up here, we'll add a public animation clip, and this will be called our util clip. This is the clip that's going to be, that the script is going to look for to replace through your controller, your animation controller, or in the state machine at least. And every time it finds an instance of this clip, it'll swap it with the new clip. So that's why we only want it to have the one unique thing in the animation state machine, so that it only replaces it in that one spot. And so we'll just replace our utility clip with the clip. And then once we've done that, the state animation has been changed. Now we just need to get to it. So that's what the trigger was for. So we'll just go to our animation controller .set trigger, and we'll just do, I think I called it util. Let me just make sure that that's right, that it is actually util. And it is. Okay. And so we should be all set here. So we'll just drag in a few things. We'll just drag in our animator, and you can assign the animator on awake and stuff if you wanted. And we'll just put in our util clip here. This is the clip that is going to be swapped out for our utility animation. And that should work. So now all that should be done. We just need a way to plug into it. And so we're going to create another really basic script here. And this is going to be on our cubes, so we're just going to call this animation swapper. And this is just going to do a few very basic things. if I can select and drag. So we're going to need a public, and we're going to need a reference to whatever we have the method that we just made to swap them out on. So our player animations, we'll just call this player. And then we'll also need a animation clip for the new clip that we want to swap to. So I'm just going to be using on mouse down. And what this will do is just whenever a game object is clicked with your mouse, it'll call the method. And I think it only works if the object has colliders on it. So whenever you click on an object's collider, on mouse down gets called, and it does whatever's in the method. So we're just going to be doing player dot, and what did we call it? Animutil. And we're just going to be putting in our new clip. So there we go. So we have a new clip now. Yeah, and that should be all we need to do here. So that should put in the new clip, and then it'll swap it in the other code. So then we'll put that on the red one, and we'll put this on the blue cube as well. And just put an animation swapper. And so for both of these, we'll just drag in the player controller or animator. And for the red clip, let's have him mine. Why not? And on the blue clip, let's do something like walk. Let's see. Carrying heavy, walk 1. Yeah. So now if we just save this and hit play, we should see that it starts off in the idle. So I'm just going to open up the animator so you can see here. We're in our base idle intro animation. If we click on the blue one, it swaps to the utility thing, and it plays the animation that we assigned on here. And if we click on the red one, it's still in the utility state, but now it's doing a different animation. So you can swap back and forth like this. And that's very, very nice. And that's basically the basics of this. We can also add some functionality really quickly to have it. We can choose whether we want the animation to repeat or not. So it'll go back to the idle state once the animation is finished. So we can just add a bool here. We'll just call this util exit. And this will let us know if we want it to exit when the animation is finished or to repeat. So we'll just make a transition from util back to our base state. And on this transition, we'll just add a condition for util exit. And if util exit is true, then it'll go back. So we can just go back really quickly, and we'll go back into our animations code here, and in our util anims, we can just add a bool for util exit, and we're going to default this to false. So when you assign something in the parameters, I think these are called, of a method, you don't have to include them when you're calling something. So like if I save this, usually, well, let me just show you. So if I save this here, I'm going to get an error here saying that it doesn't have enough parameters because it takes 2. But if we add the default to false, then I don't get that error here because it's able to take in 1, and anything that's not included that is assigned will be defaulted to whatever it's assigned to, which is nice. So we could just keep it that way, or we could assign what we wanted to when we're calling it. So for this, we're going to use this bool to set the bool if we want it to exit or not. So anims.set bool, and we'll just go util exit, and we'll set it to util exit. So we'll change this bool to whatever is put into here. And so in our swapper, this is what's assigning the clips. We'll add a new bool here, a public bool. We'll just call this exit. No, we'll just keep a util exit. And we'll assign this default to false as well. And then when we call it, we need to make sure that we put in this new bool. Otherwise, it's always going to default to false and just repeat over and over again. So now, if we go back to our red cube, which is our mining animation, let's set this to exit after that's done. And the blue cube will keep the same, so that it just repeats over and over again. And we'll hit play. And so now if we go to our blue one, the blue cube, he keeps walking. And if we click on the red cube, he does it once, and then he goes back to his idle animation. Blue cube and mining. Perfect. And that's basically it. So that's one, it's a very simple way that you can swap between animations really simply. I found this solution after hours and hours of pouring into it because I wanted to be able to change the animation based on like different nodes that the character went to without having to set it all up in the state machine. And so I tried looking for hours and hours of how to just get a state in the state machine, which is almost impossible, it seems, inside of Unity to get a reference to the state to change the animations. But eventually I stumbled upon the animation override controller, which is just, it's wonderful, and it's so much easier than anything else I was trying to do. Because you don't need to put any state machine behaviors or anything like that in the state machine and all this nonsense. And it's just really, really easy, really fast, really simple. And yeah, so I hope that this helps you out in some way or another. In the next video, I'll be going over how to implement this into a sort of usable state machine. So I'll have a very basic character controller that's using blend trees and things like that to move around. And we'll just sort of implement this behavior into that just to sort of give you an idea of how it can work together. All of the code and everything should be linked into the description to my GitHub, where I'll have all the codes for this tutorial, and you can sort of just look at the code, or you can like download the project itself and open that in Unity, and just get an idea, mess around and all that stuff if you want to. So thanks for watching.